Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, and on the other end it is Magic Mike, who is on the mic but not singing because it's my turn to do the intro and I do my old boring intro. I was just saying to Mike that someone said Steve needs to start singing, and I was like, maybe I should do a little jingle one time and surprise everyone, as much as it kind of almost makes me want to like vomit the thought of doing that, you know what I mean? But anyway, regardless, how you doing, Mike?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's one of those things where you're just gonna catch them off guard. You're lulling everybody into a false sense of security, and then you're gonna come out with
Some
it and just,
sweet, sweet tunes.
that's it. Yeah. Just maybe you might go rogue. Maybe it might be this like opera voice no one knows that you had.
Yeah, I definitely don't have an opera voice, but my granddad always said I should go into the choir because he was like, you have a nice low, deep voice. You could go into the choir. He always encouraged that. I never did, but he encouraged it.
Is that called like a tenor? Because you've got different names or for the
Literally
different.
no idea, Mike. So you could say it is called a tenor, and I would believe you.
There you go. But yeah, no, do you know what? This week's gone well. I think, as you'll know as well, like the temperature in the UK has kind of just started to creep down a little bit. So it's been getting kind of a bit more manageable from a heat perspective. In the
Makes a
clinic,
huge
it's been
difference.
just super sticky. So yeah, it's been
Yeah.
great.
Last night was the first night. Almost didn't put the aircon on at all. That was the first night for a while. I had only just recently started using it, but I don't think it will be necessary. Actually, saying that, I looked at the weather and it looks like it's going to start getting hot again, like sometime next week.
How is it?
Yeah, not as hot. I think we've reached like maybe the peak temperatures for this summer in the UK, but yeah, it looks like it's getting close to 30 degrees again. So gonna have to battle through that stickiness. It's interesting training. I don't know. I'm guessing your gym doesn't have aircon, right?
No.
So yeah, it's interesting training. But you train first thing, so it's a little bit better. Whereas I pretty much train in peak heat because I train at about like 1 p.m. basically, and that's when the sun's really starting to get hot. You could argue it's closer to like 4 or 5 that it gets like peak heat, but it's pretty hot at that point, and I'm just like dripping bullets. Actually, it was worse. We'll probably talk about it a little bit. This little one wants to come on my lap, I think. Come on. For those that can't see, okay, she's just been awkward.
Ada's wanting to go on Steve's lap.
Ada's pouring at me, and I'm giving her everything, all the attention she wants over the next days because yeah, she's not been well. But I was making my way to the hospital, or I don't know if it's called a hospital, the animal hospital, I guess it is.
Mm.
And it was the hottest day, like whatever day it was, and I was on the bus, and I had to run to get the bus because the platform I was going for was closed and they were having like building work done. So I like ran to the next platform, caught the bus, and I was just stood there like, oh my god, I just started sweating through my t-shirt and then just had bullets of sweat dripping off me. This woman looked over at me, she was like fanning her face, and she was like she was like gave me the eye of like, yeah, you're hot, aren't you? So anyway, yeah, it's been hot.
Oh, it's so when you can just feel the sweat just dripping down you, it's just like, oh, this is not good.
You get to a point where you have to give into it. So
You
yeah,
do.
that is what it is. But
And
yeah,
I'm,
you are feeling better because you came off the back. I don't know if we spoke about it last time. I think we did. You just started your deload last time we spoke, right?
that's right. So it was really good actually. Just around that time as well, just getting a couple of niggles as well. Like neck was a little bit cranky, knee was a bit cranky, back was a bit cranky, and like there was still some remnants of that going into Monday. But I would say yesterday and today were the days where I was like, this feels better again. This feels good. I feel back to new. So it was like that was really positive and encouraging. So yeah, took the deload through the weekend. I think yeah, apart from those little niggles, I was generally feeling better. And then it's just continued to improve as this week's gone on. So it's been really nice from that perspective.
Yeah, the key is, as we've mentioned before, we didn't actually mention this last time in terms of our philosophy surrounding deloading, but also the fact that you don't necessarily have to deload a week. Like it could be, I think your deload was Thursday through Sunday, right? So it's 4
Yeah.
days. That might be sufficient. Just like we auto-regulate when you take the deload, the length of the deload also doesn't have to be standard. I think a week just holds because the Gregorian calendar is a week, right? And so that's why most splits are done on 7 days. And I think for a lot of people that makes great sense. Most of my clients will deload a week long because it just makes sense for their lifestyle and what they're doing. And hey, a lot of people aren't worried about having like 2 or 3 extra days out of the gym. Like it's not a big deal to them. But for some people, you can experiment with shorter, truncated deload styles, and that might suit you nicely.
Yeah, and I think, and again, maybe this is something that's changed over time as well. We're not massively specific on how people do it as well. I know that there's been some deloads where I've not really gone into the gym at all because I've just felt, do you know what, I just need the headspace to kind of mentally refresh myself from going to the gym, or maybe I'm just so banged up like I just can't. I don't really want to go to the gym, and just that refreshes my mojo a bit more. Whereas this time I still went into the gym, but I just did very light deload kind of style sessions because I still felt, do you know what? I want to still move. I want to still kind of move and kind of get a bit of keep the technique kind of relatively well ingrained in my head and in my body. But yeah, but it just kind of varies. But we're not too specific on how people do that.
No, I don't think that's necessarily new. I think we've deloaded. We've kind of talked about not having specific styles of deloading. It's just like, hey, you want to make sure it's not overloading in volume or stimulus so that you can actually recover by the end of the week and you feel like you mentioned, you want to come into the new mesocycle feeling like fresh. If there's ever a time you should feel fresh, it's week 1 going into a mesocycle. Other times during the mesocycle, you're going to feel variety of beat up because that's how training goes. That's when you're overloading. That's how you should feel. So that's when you kind of know.
Definitely. And this is really relevant actually, because I was speaking with a client today and I think they're around actually week 5, but they were saying like, oh, I'm starting to feel, a bit of fatigue and a bit of achiness. And I'm saying, yeah, that's kind of natural right now. They also have quite a busy lifestyle as well, from a business entrepreneurial perspective. And and they also happened to have a week where they had more going on with their family and things like that. And I was saying, well, bear in mind as well that your recovery outside of the gym is even more important, and so you might feel your perception or your actual fatigue might be greater than it would normally be because you've got all this other lifestyle stress that's going on that's inhibiting your ability to recover and cause fatigue to rise. So it's very contextual.
Yeah, it's so individual. And as you mentioned there, I always like to say stress is stress is stress. I think that's from
Hmm.
the stress of life. Got it over there by Hans Saye, or however say his name. So a great book if people are interested. Stress of Life. And yeah, I always analogize it like you've got this kitchen sink or whatever, and all stresses contribute to that. And if it starts spilling over because you've got extra life stress kicking in, or I don't know, you've started a diet and you haven't got sufficient drainage, you've had poor sleep maybe, which is even contributing to stress rather than reducing it. If you're spilling over, then there's going to be problems, and we need to manage that. And one of the ways to manage stress is obviously through some sort of deload. And I often do find, as you mentioned though, it might just be a week where he feels like that. And if life stresses come down, gets his sleep in order, and he starts actually, you get more of that repeated bout effect. You adapt to that high level of stress of training. It's now like, oh, I can deal with this now. So there might be times of which it's like, I think that is something that changed in my head was like a week can feel overwhelming, but don't suddenly like pull back, see what it's like the next week. And it might actually start feeling a little bit more comfortable and easy. And then you can kind of quote unquote kind of grind through it and the body adapts, and then it's like, oh, now that once really hard week, maybe an 8 out of 10 is now like a 6 out of 10. That's great.
Yeah.
So I think people just need to be aware that the repeat bout effect is huge.
Definitely. And on that kind of note, I said this today as well. It's kind of, you can change your perspective a little bit, because when you have a week where maybe just life hits you a little bit, just kind of seeing it as a really good kind of like test almost of, it's testing the systems that you've got in place. It's testing your nutritional strategies and or maybe kind of like time management or whatever. And it's like, hey, if one of those systems or strategies failed, hey, that's actually really good, because maybe there's something that you can do to make things a little bit more efficient, or maybe you'll just actually handle, when things do calm down again, maybe you'll just be even more efficient, so you handle things that much better. So, again, in small doses, that you can have that eustress or de-stress, as long as it's a short-term thing that you can adapt to, it's actually a positive thing maybe in the long run.
Yeah, and that's yeah, on that note of stressors, as you mentioned, I just posted some of my leg training, and I just had I guess a multitude of unusual stressors occur in my life recently. Obviously, I got the tattoo, which I can't say isn't a stress. It's quite clearly a stress because it is like it's essentially like a medical procedure on your leg, and it's having to recover. It was incredibly inflamed, and I didn't stop training. I didn't really take maybe did I take an extra rest day? Kind of, but not really. I kind of like managed it and pushed things around so that I could keep training. And it seemed like I kind of went through it without it really impacting quality or me overall. But then I had the stress of Ada, as I kind of mentioned at the start here. If people have been keeping up with my Instagram stories, you'll have seen that she's not been well. Obviously, we had that podcast. I don't know how long ago it was, but she was like randomly sick right near the end, and I just had to call it. And the dogs are sick. Like once, I didn't know that Ada's the first dog I've owned. Have you had dogs in the past, Mike? No. So you can't quite. I never understood it. I didn't understand the relationship people got with dogs and their pets in general because I never really had them. I kind of understood it, like, oh yeah, you get close, but I never really understood it until you have one. But similarly, like dogs do puke up because they eat shit off the ground, and Ada does that. She's a scavenger, so we didn't really think too much of it. Obviously, there's just been a build of her not being well and the kind of vets putting, I guess, as an analogy, a plaster on it versus solving the actual problem. So we ended up going to like I said, animal hospital. I don't know what the term is for it. And so we left her there overnight to do some real investigation. So she had to be sedated. They got bloods done. They did an ultrasound of her stomach. And dude, I think it was a combination of factors because over the weekend, just gone, she basically developed what seemed like a UTI. So she was just dribbling everywhere from that area. She'd just like lie down and there'd be a puddle underneath as if she'd done a wee, but she hadn't. It was just, it's that or incontinence. We're not really sure what's going on. But that amongst not eating her food, kind of having a bit of diarrhea, being sick, and basically not moving, partly due to the heat and obviously just not feeling well. When I took her to the vets on Monday, I had to carry her there. Like literally, she hadn't moved all day, and I had to just pick her up from where she was lying down and carry her the whole way to the vets. That's how bad she was. And you know what she's like? She's like the most energetic, crazy dog ever. So it was horrible seeing her like that, and clearly quite scared. Actually, I laugh at this. It's not really funny, but the sessions I did all this week so far, actually, I left halfway through the session to check on her, apart from Monday, because Monday she was at Monday we took her to the vets, but yesterday and the day before I did half my session, walked home, which is only like 5 minutes, you know how close it is. But yeah, I walked home to check on her, make sure she's okay, then get back. Yeah. So clearly, it's hard to concentrate at times when you're stressed about this thing. It's impacting sleep and so on and so forth. And so from the blood, anyway, to update the story, from the blood work, she doesn't have pancreatitis, which is what they thought she might have. And ideally she would have that because that would have been quite easy. You just manage it via diet. But they found via the ultrasound, a lump of sorts, some sort of tumor, which may be benign or not within her stomach and intestines, which is clearly causing the problems. So they've taken samples and they've sent that off to a lab. So we're waiting for results, basically, which I doubt we'll get any this week because we won't get it over the weekend. I doubt we'll get it tomorrow. They said 5 days. So we'll probably get it early next week to see what that is and what the next steps are, which basically be either surgery or surgery in a combination of, if it's as bad as what we think it is, it could be chemotherapy and all of that if she does have that, which I'm kind of setting myself up for that being the case, so that if it is that, then I'm not destroyed as much by it. But if it isn't that, then I can be overwhelmingly happy. I know that almost sounds defeatist, but I think that just given, I don't know, some experiences from last year, it feels a better way to approach it. But yeah, that's been stressful dealing with her, and not even just the emotional stress, physically, like I said, I'm walking back and forth, carrying her here and there, traveling a hot flipping bus, sweating buckets. So it's inevitably, as much as I like to think I'm a robot and it doesn't impact me, I can start feeling the effects where I'm getting beaten up by training that's not normally beating me up in the same way, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And it's not like you've been, training for 4 weeks or whatever. It's like this is week 14, 15.
Yeah, I'd have to look at my spreadsheet actually. Do I have it open? Well, I do have it open.
I'm
Where is
pretty
it?
sure it's 14.
Yeah, I'm coming into week. I just finished week 14. Yeah, so next week is week 15.
So huge accumulation.
Yeah.
Um, so but I do think that approach of, planning for the worst, I think that is a better way to go, rather than, hoping for the best. Because like you said, it's not, it doesn't come as a shock, if it is that, you can deal with it. You've had time to kind of, mentally prepare yourself, and then you can just go with it, So yeah, I think, and also I think on a wider perspective, unfortunately, nobody on this planet is, immune to these life things not happening. And, bodybuilding is just one part of it, but life, family, friends, etc., it happens, and we all have to experience that at some point. And yeah, it doesn't take away from the challenge or the toughness of any of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, as much as I have like a lifestyle that's very amenable to bodybuilding, there's still stuff even for me that I can't control as much as I would like to. And then, like you said, if you start going down that route of, I just like, there's nothing that can get in the way of bodybuilding, you either miss out on life or you become very selfish and lonely. And bodybuilding at its most extreme is incredibly selfish and lonely, I think, if you take it that way. And I think inevitably, if you do that, you're going to burn out. You're not going to stick it out long term. But I'm hoping, fingers crossed. I haven't seen any like severe drops in performance, but I'm getting to that point, Mike, that we've discussed with your training before, where essentially it's the analogy is the juice worth the squeeze, where I'm like, I'm trying pretty hard to hold onto some performance here, and I'm feeling pretty beat up from it. Am I just like pushing something that if I just took a step back, I'd take 2 steps forward? So I'm kind of thinking about that. It'll probably become clear after like how this weekend goes and how I feel. But yeah, I think my knee is one area that's upset. Obviously, your physio brain will start firing, but it just, my left knee started getting upset. And I think that's related to the tattoo, because I modified my technique, and then I related to the tattoo. It's hard to actually know exactly. I also tried, I don't know if you've tried these, but sissy squat hacks or hack sissy squats.
No, not yet. No, I haven't yet.
So I had tried them in the past. I didn't really get on with them, but it's because I thought they were going to be easier than they were, and they're way harder than body weight. Like they are, like I can get like around 10 reps to failure, somewhere around that. So they're really tough.
Yeah.
And but I'd been doing those for a couple of weeks. The first week my knee wasn't loving it, but I was like, it's probably just going to adapt to it. It wasn't severe enough. But then I did it again, and I was kind of stubborn. I did like 2 sets with it, and then I was like, nah, I'm not going to do my other set like that. I'll do it body weight. But I think that pissed it off. And then because I'm taking like leg press very close to failure, and my knee felt a little bit like I was to the point of, it was less than a 5 out of 10 pain for sure, maybe a 3. But where you're like, it wouldn't surprise me if something just popped here, but I'm going to be like, I was kind of stubborn and kept going. I think I ended up using my right side a little bit more than my left. And yeah, anyway, my left knee's pissed off, and then my right quad actually got more sore than my left. And I've, the last 2 weeks, had overlapping quad soreness going into my next leg session. I thought the first time was just because of novelty of trying it. I was leg pressing differently due to the tattoo. And then this time I was like, wow, why am I this sore? And I think it's just because I am pushing so hard and in like PR territory. The body's just like, wow, okay, yeah, you're dealing with a lot here. It was the point of like touching the quad. I couldn't feel it, but every time I walked around, I could feel soreness. So going in today's session, I warmed up and everything. I thought it would dissipate, but it didn't. But I could still perform, but my performance it just didn't feel as good, if that makes sense. Like getting into a deep squat position, I was like, I can feel the soreness. So I was kind of just a brute head bodybuilder and continued to march on through. But yeah, so we'll see how I am doing tomorrow. But I'm getting to that beat up position where I think I'm going to have to take some days to back off soon. But this is where having a coach would be helpful, because I think if I had a coach in my corner that just said, yeah, Steve, flipping heck, back off, you're all good, I could easily, like, you probably find this where it's easy to, like, when someone tells you to do it, it's like, okay, cool, that's what I needed. Whereas when you're trying to do it yourself, you're like, oh. It's same with dieting. You're like, oh, maybe I could just eke out another week of like hard dieting. When really, if you put your coaching hat on, you'd be like, nah, pull back.
It's such a tricky thing. I think as people, some people are better than others, but like you said, you haven't got that hard external voice to say stop, you know. And but again, it swings and roundabouts with these things, isn't it? And ultimately, I was thinking as you were saying that I think it's okay to be a brute head once, but when you get some warning signs, it's like, right, okay, you heed the warning signs and then you go from there. So, like I said, maybe if you're getting signals later this week that the juice isn't worth the squeeze, it's like, right, we heed those messages, we be the wise person, and then we go from there.
Yeah, I know I have in mind. There's in August I have a holiday. I don't know how many days it's going to be, but celebrating my dad's 70th, I believe.
Cool.
So I have like it's like a family holiday basically. I haven't even checked if there's probably like a crappy gym facility, probably similar to what it was in the Maldives, probably worse than the Maldives. Actually, the Maldives was not too bad. So it will act as like a deload. I'm considering using that as like a actually, Steve, like just take that time off. Don't even,
Mm.
unless I really, like you said, unless obviously doing some light movement is often better for recovery than not doing anything. So if I feel the urge for it, then yeah, maybe I'll do some light activity. But I'm also do like some swimming and play with my nieces and nephews and stuff versus going to the gym. So that I can give some of my joint and connective tissue or some rest because that golfer's elbow hasn't gone. It just
Interesting.
flares up now and then and is mostly okay. Funnily enough, it's worst it's like when I grip things, it's the worst. So like on today, like Smith squats, when I'm in this position and I finish and I'm like gripping as I finish the set and I get off and I'm like, that like the pain, the acute pain in the elbow. But anyway, I digress.
No, it makes sense. There could be a number of factors. Firstly, like obviously it's did you say golfers out? It's golfers, so it's medial, it's
Yeah.
inside. So obviously you flex the tendon. So every time you flex and go to grip, you're going to be activating that. If there's like a little bit of sensitization in the tendon, then we're going to be just engaging that sensitivity a little bit. Sometimes what you can also get is if you're just training hard and maybe the body is in a bit of a fatigued state, there might be some, again, neural tension potentially as well. Again, just thinking you're in that position where things are a little bit more stretched out. Sometimes that can contribute to things sometimes. So yeah, but yeah, interesting that it's still there.
Yeah, it's like you've talked to me about. You sometimes flag up you have niggles, but you're like, but they're manageable. I think it's like that.
Yeah.
It's like I'm aware of it, and it's not getting worse. In fact, mostly getting better. And it sometimes flares up, but it's like a very obvious, like, oh, I over gripped, or it's not like that gripping is making it worse. So yeah, it's more just the general systemic fatigue and the beat upness, if I put it that way, and obviously that SI joint kind of issue
Mm.
that I have now and then has flared up a little today.
Ah.
But so yeah, we'll see how I'm doing tomorrow. I managed to hold on to my deadlift performance still, but it's getting real tough. And you also get to that point of like the technique, is it getting outside of that range of acceptable technique? Is it getting a little sloppy, and are you just worth resetting things? So I'm
Yeah.
considering putting potentially swapping some exercises in and out, or yeah, just resetting technique on some things because, as you said, I think I've pretty much followed this split and most exercises in my program since the start of the year. So it's
Hmm.
been like over 6 months that they've been running. So I think I've earned a rotation in exercise, which will be nice. It's kind of like for us, when you rotate an exercise in, it's almost like a kid in a candy store. It's like, oh, it's nice to have something different.
Yeah. It's
You
like,
feel like you
oh,
have to earn it though.
I know. But it's funny because to maybe like an outside person, it might seem like the blandest of swaps, but like to us, it's like, oh, this is this little new cheeky new movement or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, oh, I get to do a different lat pull down variant. Oh, I get the hip hinge is the one where I'm like, oh, maybe I'll rotate the RDLs out. But I'm like, what would I rotate those out for? Good mornings I enjoy for like a few months, and then I'm like, they're just not RDLs.
Mm. Do you have like a? Have you ever thought of those trap bar RDLs?
I've never gone with trap bar RDLs. I've tried them in
Uh,
the past. They always feel off to me. I don't know why. I think part of it is the grip because often you have to have quite a wide, like depending on the trap bar, you can't have your with the straight bar RDLs, obviously you can go a bit wider and narrower, like you're in control of that. But with the trap bar, it's fixed. So you can't be as close to your body. So I guess I feel a bit more in my traps because I'm a bit out here. I don't know about you if you've tried trap bar RDLs.
No, I've never tried them before. I've seen people do them, so I sometimes kind of offer as
Wonder.
a suggestion, but I've personally not tried them.
Yeah. And then dumbbells, inevitably you get so strong at them, especially because RDLs or hip hinge you tend to do in the lower rep range. The dumbbells just become like so annoying to have to move around and pick up and all of that. And also, most gyms, including mine, don't have nice small progressions in dumbbells. It's like this 5 kilo jumps or something.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
have to
you
see.
could. It's been a while since you've done the belt squat RDLs.
Oh, actually, that's a point. Yeah, I had been thinking about the belt squat RDLs, and I think that also tends to really sit well with my SI joint. It's a bit, I don't know, for whatever reason, the mechanics of the lift. And it's just different. That allows me also to get more range of motion somehow. I seem to be able to sink deeper into that more comfortably. So, yeah, maybe I'll go back to the belt squat. And that's great because I
Yeah.
have the logbook data to be able to compare against, which is always what we want.
Yeah, I feel like it's maybe been since 2023 or even going back before then.
It might be 2023. I ran it for a long time, like a year I ran that for. So, yeah, I'd be excited to get back to it actually.
That'd be cool. I reckon I reckon you do some serious weight on that, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably. It was already getting quite heavy
I
because,
know.
yeah, I don't know. You just can end up getting pretty heavy on there. But anything else on your end, Mike?
Yes, very
Oh,
exciting news.
if it
New
isn't what I
anime.
think it is, oh, okay, okay. There's something else I need to flag up as well.
Okay. So I started as of last night. So not I haven't been obviously just last night, but Hunter x Hunter. So looking forward to diving into that. It's really early stages, just getting introduced to Gon, son of Gon. And do you know what? I can't remember the other two characters' names. Mr. something and who's in the suit.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah. I know who you mean, and I've forgotten his name as well because I'm terrible with names. I know
he's like
exactly who you
got
mean.
he's got glasses, well, like me, glasses, and he wears
Yeah.
a suit. And
Hey, does he
there's
have a suitcase as well, right?
yes.
Or like a briefcase rather?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know exactly who you mean. The listeners will probably be shouting the name. The people that know the anime. I've just his name's completely gone from me. Japanese names, or I don't know if it's even Japanese, but it's not your typical names.
No. Exactly. So yeah, it's really interesting so far. So I obviously Gon super positive. The one thing that struck me about Gon so far is that he seems really talented in most areas, but he doesn't seem to have like a weak spot at the moment. Like he hasn't got any adversity at the moment that he's having to overcome. Like so far, he just seems good at everything, bar quizzes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's not the brightest spark, is like how they portray him. He's a little bit Goku esque in many
Yeah.
ways. Yeah, and there's some other kind of character. Well, you'll see Killua when he gets introduced at some point. So, but yeah, Gon is probably the other tattoo I will get. But that's not so much because I love him as a character. I think he's fine. It's more the relationship he develops with Killua, which you'll come to. I don't think that's a spoiler, but you'll come to see it.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. Yeah. The bigger news than that though is on Monday. What happened?
Oh, was it my birthday?
Was it?
Yeah, it was my birthday.
Everyone
Yeah, it
needs to
was my
write in the comments now. Happy birthday, Mike. You're old and grey now.
literally.
Didn't lose your
So
hair.
yeah, I joined you in the 35 club. So we're both 35 now,
Yeah.
which is great.
Were you at work for it, or you had your
I
dad
was.
over for the weekend, right? So that was kind of the celebration a little bit.
Yeah, so my dad lives in Belgium and he came over on Friday night and we kind of went out for a meal and then we spent all of Saturday together, a bit of Sunday. So it was really nice to see him. I only see him like once or twice a year, so it was nice to kind of catch up. It's quite cool because he's not so much now, but he used to be really into bodybuilding as well. So we'd kind of chat about like the Mr. Olympia and stuff like that. So that was always quite cool. But now he's just kind of just trying to stay fit and healthy. So yeah, it was nice to see him again.
Yeah, it breaks you. It's good chatting to like family sometimes where they're divorced from the specific niche we're in, but have like a bit of an interest in it. And then you can kind of, I don't know, feel like you get a bit of an outside perspective on what people think of bodybuilding and the fitness industry and health and all that good stuff. Sometimes it can be frustrating though, because sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, you're following Eddie Abu or someone like that.
That must be what it feels like when you talk to me.
No. You don't follow barely anyone, but the people you do follow are very wise and great educators, whereas Eddie is a pseudoscientist, but to put it that way. I'm not even sure he would call himself science-based, which is good, but people still love him. But anyway, he should have stuck to bodybuilding.
For sure. And on that note, how did the podcast go? Obviously, we won't release any spoilers, but you recorded a podcast with Greg Knuckles.
It was great. Those podcasts are always challenging because there's so much to cover. It's similar to when I have someone on to review a meta-analysis. It's okay reviewing like a study, but when you're reviewing a meta-analysis, a study of studies, and like there's so many avenues and deep dives you could go into. I don't know how many words Greg's volume kind of article was, but it took me hours to read it and make notes and to kind of digest it. And even then, there were bits where I was like, kind of, I have to be honest, glazing over it because it was just so much information. I was like, I'm not going to get through it all in time because all the stuff going on with Ada, I'm not going to be able to go through it all in time. And he was kind of making and emphasizing points, and I felt like I could kind of like skim parts. But even that, having done that, I had notes upon notes upon notes. So then trying to kind of get a good structure and not miss points. So we ended up speaking for 2 hours. It could have been double easily to have, and still not probably covered everything. But I think I covered most points, and I was really, really trying to play a critical role in that situation and ask the hard questions that I know people want to be asked. And so it was great to be able to do that with Greg and bounce ideas off him. And obviously he hasn't been on the podcast for ages. We had him on for a roundtable with Mike on genetics ages and ages ago, which was a great roundtable. But since then he hasn't been on. I think part and due, I don't really actually know why not. Sometimes there are guests who I haven't had on for ages, not because I wouldn't want them on. It's because sometimes, for whatever reason I have in my head, they might not want to come on, or I don't know, I just haven't seen their stuff for a while. So then it just doesn't kind of give me an indication to bring them on. But yeah, it's similar. Brett Contreras, I haven't had it on that many times, but I can't remember why, but we started having a bit of a back and forth in DMs on Instagram. And I was like, hey, Brett, can I ask you back on the podcast? Because I'd love to get you back on. And I didn't even have a topic in mind. I just wanted to get him back on because I thought it would be great to just have a chat. And now we have a topic, and I've got some more work I need to do to kind of. I think he's done a lot of the work, to be fair, and I don't know how much stuff he's handed across to me to be able to review ahead of time. So I'll be more so hearing what he's got to say offhand. And this is talking about range of motion as it pertains to hypertrophy, and particularly the glutes, because I think he has some new perspectives on that, which people won't be surprised about, I don't think. But anyway, the podcast with Greg went great.
and it's really, do you know what's really interesting? And I think, do you know what, sometimes those episodes which are, maybe it's not super scientific or like, you know, there's like a ton of information, sometimes they're still valuable, and sometimes it's just nice to hear what's going on, you know, for them and what's going on in their lives. Like, sometimes I think that's equally valuable. Again, like, how are they managing themselves? How, you know, what is their general insights and wisdom over the last however many months or years? I think that's really valuable. And it's a nice balance and contrast to, you know, hard information all the time.
Yeah. And it's nice for me too, because I find those a bit of a like breather versus the hard information. So it's nice to be able to do that. I do know I need to do a dieting episode solo because people have asked for that, and the massing one went down well. So I do want to try and set aside some time for that. But again, I don't want to freeball that. I want to have some structure. So I want to make sure I put some time into kind of setting that one up. But should we get to some questions, Mike?
Let's get to some questions. Awesome. Give the people what they want. All right. So, do
you want to do the first one?
Yeah. So I think the first one is from Wodrave.
Yes,
is that what you've got?
I have. Yeah.
Cool. So, how do you work with clients that have had a hard time tracking? They just don't like to track their performance or nutrition or activity.
Interesting. I didn't think they would name performance, nutrition, and activity. I thought it was just going to be a nutrition one. So the thought that immediately comes to mind is you can't manage what you don't measure. And even if, so with nutrition as an example, like you don't have to track macros. And you don't have to track all three macros. You could just do a protein and calorie track, or you could do a protein and body weight track. So you make sure you're hitting your protein, but you just track your body weight trends over time, and that gives you a understanding of where your energy balance is. If you're going up at the right rate or down or maintenance, then you know where energy you're consuming the right amount. The hard part is if you're not going in the right direction with the right amount, then it's like hard to know how to necessarily adjust that very nicely. And then you can have things like, hey, you don't even have to track protein. You could just do, okay, I want to get like you do your palms type of thing, a precision nutrition approach where they do like a fistful of carbs, fistful of plants, thumb of fat, and a fistful of protein, something like that. The specifics don't really matter. Just like how to build your plate, like design your plates like this. And that can work really well for people. But otherwise you're just going towards, I guess, mindful eating or intuitive eating. And then you could just track body weight. But you still want to have eyes on, if you're mindful eating, you're being mindful of plants and protein basically, and satiety. Obviously, you're doing similar with intuitive eating, but that you don't really, with intuitive eating, from my understanding of the specific use of that approach is it's not to manipulate body composition. So I don't think intuitive eating and body composition manipulation go together at all. I think they're completely separate. So then the furthest away from any sort of tracking would be just eat mindfully. And what I'd encourage that person to do is maybe we'd start there, see how they were getting on, and then be like, can we add layers of more precision as we go, and then find the sweet spot of we're precise enough to be driving results really clearly and managing it well, and we have the data available to be able to manage, but it's not so overwhelming that you're not willing to do it, that sort of thing. And then I'd probably, again, do a similar thing with their training. So it might be a case of, okay, so you don't like logging all your weights, logging all your reps and so on and so forth, but let's at least track some of those big compound lifts so we know where they're going, and at least the first set so we know where they're going, so that we can, again, manage an element of things, or even to the point of which, like, and this requires a lot, there has to be some sort of tracking, because it's like, how do you know what's happening in the gym if you don't track like the weights you're using? Even if you're remembering what you used, now you're just trying to track via memory. Why would you not just have it down in a logbook? Because we know how important progressive overload is. And the only way we know that we're moving in the direction that we want for muscle gain, or sorry, one of the strongest determinants of that is that we're getting stronger in the hypertrophy rep range over time. So if you're not willing to track any data, then you're just like lost. And I'd be like, well, you came to me as a coach for a reason. And for me to be able to coach you, I need some minimal amounts of data. These are the absolute basics I must, and requirements I absolutely have for you. And then I'd be like, if you're not willing to do that, then it's a case of, right, you're not ready to be coached. As far as I'm concerned, you're not taking this seriously. But like I've said, we have lots of data we could collect. Doesn't mean we need it all. It depends on the person's goals and how stressful they find it. And I will offload data tracking at times when I find no value in it. So for most clients will have tick boxes for landing within macros. I will have some clients that just love putting in the exact macros they ate. And I was like, I actually don't need that precision, but they like it. So we track it. Mm-hmm. Or there's times of which we'll remove step tracking because it could be a stressor, or it's just like your steps are so like the same all the time. We don't need that data in there. But for other people, it might be a bit more varied, or they're in a diet phase and we need to keep them accountable. Sleep is one that I remove with some people who have very consistent sleep and they don't need that adherence, and they just flag up if it's wrong. So yeah, there's many approaches here. I don't think I have anything else to add.
I think you nailed it. And the analogy that you've always used, Steve, is also tracking as kind of like a GPS. It's like, well, if you don't care about getting to your destination or getting to your destination on time, then you might not need a GPS. But if you care about maybe getting there on time or at a certain time, if you actually care about getting there at all, then it's helpful, at least at the start, to use it, right? And just as you were saying, as you were talking as well, the first thing is like, right, what are your goals? Maybe they aren't they aren't kind of massing or cutting. Maybe there is just more of a maintenance goal. In that case, like, okay, hey, we probably can be more towards the mindful eating approach. But if they've got goals towards progress somewhere and they care about making progress, there has to be a bit of give and take somewhere.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there's just got to be, yeah, you've just got to suck it up. And I think also something that I would always look to do is like, what don't you like about tracking? Like, dive into that further. It's like,
Yeah.
is there like a mental kind of trigger that gives that person anxiety, or is it more just like they can't deal with the faff of it? I know some people have said to me like they hate spreadsheets, and so when they look at the spreadsheet it just turns them off, and it's like, okay. And I think once you can pick that apart, then that might help get that person to track a little bit more.
100%. The thought that immediately comes to mind is people who they don't eat similarly day to day, and so they're like tracking all these different things. I'm just like, just get to a semi like flexible meal plan, and you're tracking by default without having to log every day because you eat the same things every day, pretty much. You might just vary like a protein source or what have you, and that's a great way to do it. So I think you talking about diving into and asking them that really great question of just like, what is it about the process that you don't enjoy? Because that might then give you easy solutions to be able to make that process easier for them. And that's coaching. So yeah, great. Next question.
Cool. Yeah.
It's Jojo_Wyndham has asked, female 62 kilograms, eating in a surplus, 3,100 calories, no cardio, struggle with food, any pointers, neat high as I'm a nurse, about to increase to 3,300. Man, you're going to have a lot of people jealous of this intake.
I know. This is crazy. But do you know what? It's like a lot of things. Sometimes the person who's going through it, they don't see it as a good thing.
No, I relate.
Yeah.
Hard.
This sounds like it's becoming a bit of a hassle for Jojo. But I think the main things here is that utilize the easy wins. So the things that you've spoken about so much, it's like, right, how we've got our baseline diet of, okay, we're getting a certain amount of protein through our various meals. Can we, and I guess it depends on also her shifts as a nurse, but right, really utilize, juices, more higher palatable, high nutrient dense, higher calorie foods, and utilize those at your disposal to the best of your degree. And it might be stuff like, as an example, depending on when you train, like say in the morning, maybe you're just having a bit of a yogurt, but putting a bit more honey on there, for example, or something else. Maybe you're having some orange juice with that. And again, before you know it, again, it's quite easy for the calories to then add up and not be, again, sometimes when you're transitioning from one diet to another, we can sometimes subconsciously bring our previous habits with us. And so we might not necessarily realize that, oh, actually, the size of this meal was actually quite voluminous. I can maybe cut down on some of this volume and make it a bit more dense here and there, utilizing liquid calories, etc. And something else that I was going to say was, I think also the final point that I would mention is just being a bit more flexible with macros. So it might be that maybe, for example, fats might not be too high. It's like, all right, why don't you try and bump them up a little bit? Because that will contain a few more calories here and there. I mean, it might have a trade-off with, digestion, but again, you can find your sweet spot as to where those sources are coming from. So I think playing around with those things can be useful.
Great points, Mike. I would say my immediate thought to this question is, think about everything you do when you're dieting and flip it on its head. When you do that approach, it basically is everything you mentioned there. So like palatability. When you're dieting, you want low palatable. So when you're massing and you're struggling, you want high palatability. When you're dieting, you're struggling with you're trying to keep satiated. You have low calorie per bite food. So now you go towards high calorie per bite foods. Typically, larger, less frequent meals are better for keeping you satiated, whereas smaller, frequent meals are better for like keeping, like allowing more food to get in. So increase meal frequency. Like you said, they're liquid calories. When you're dieting and struggling, no way you want to go to liquid calories. But when you're not, go that way. Again, people tend to go lower fat when they're dieting because, again, it's a calorie dense macro. So you could go higher in fat. And I think something you mentioned nicely also was the simplest thing to do is one is just make the meals you're consuming bigger. That's just one thing people don't think about. It's like, oh, you're having 80 grams of rice, make it 100 grams. Like increase everything by like 5-10%, you'll probably get to the calories. And then what can you do to those meals to make them more calorie dense? Olive oil, like olive oil is a great fat. Putting olive oil, I don't know if you've ever done it, Mike, but I've got to points in mass phases where I will put like tablespoons of olive oil over meals. It just makes it easier to go down. It's
Yeah.
quite a nice flavor to the point of which you don't even notice it. So it's a really great way. Or you switch your glass of water to a glass of juice, like you said.
Yeah.
Like it's an easy way to get in some calories. Um, the other thing that I just flag is some people struggle, and this is something I want to be a little bit more on top of next time I get to this point. This is something Stan Efferding talks about with his vertical diet. Is his vertical diet is based around very very basics of like easy to digest food. So that's why he uses a lot of rice. That's why he uses a lot of like lean beef. He uses like orange juice, carrots, and he avoids some foods that cause digestive distress in large quantities. So you might want to look at how many of the foods I'm eating high in FODMAPs. So you might remove foods that are highly fermentable and causing digestive distress and go to like easier to digest foods, which is what you were kind of talking about with fats. Can slow digestion, can kind of cause some upset, but rice products are super easy to get down. And the other thing I would do, just as a final point, is lean into times of which when your appetite is higher. When your appetite's low, don't force feed yourself. You're going to just back yourself up and make yourself feel sick and worse and not eat at other times. But when your appetite's high, could be post-workout, I don't know, so on and so forth. For me, in the morning, my appetite is terrible when I'm massing deep into a mass. Right now, it's just fine. It's quite nice that it is. But when I'm deeper into a mass, I'm just like liquid calories in the morning, not too much, because otherwise I'll feel terrible. And then it's normally like post-workout, further into the kind of late afternoon, evening, I have a good appetite. I'm like, right, I can get in like 1,000, 2,000 calories within a serving here, and that suits me just well. So, and the final point I'll say is variety. Variety helps a ton. So have a bunch of different flavors because you get this kind of sensory specific satiety, which is great when you're dieting. Just have loads of the same thing. You're just like, oh, I'm bored of this. So make sure you have loads of different, like you said, sauces, flavors, like honey. Like it's so good to do that. I think that's all I would say on that point, really.
I think that's lots of food for thought. Pardon
Yes.
the pun. So, but next question. So Patrick Morris asks, on average, what are your weekly volumes for each muscle group?
We kind of went over our, what was it, forearms, was it last time or something like that? I'd have to go and look at my program off the top of my head. I know that my back and chest are in around 20 to 25. My delts are in and around, side delts specifically, are in and around 20. My calves will be similar to that. Abs will be a bit less, 15 to 20. And then my legs, I think hamstrings are at closer to 10 to 15. And then my quads will be closer to 15 sets at the moment, just off the top of my dome. When without going through without trying to look through my entire program, and I don't really count, like I do 4 sets of direct glute work, but yeah, that's it.
That's a good memory, to be honest. I don't think I'd be able to reel off how many sets I'm doing. I know that lower body has the lowest amount of volume for me in total. Hamstrings has quite a low volume. Quads, decent amount, but compared to side delts, chest, back, that just has quite a lot.
Yeah, your volume probably isn't too different from mine, actually.
No,
I think I have a little bit more
very similar
for calves. But yeah, most other things are relatively similar on average. Yeah, we're not too dissimilar there, which is we train 6 days a week. We've both been training for over a decade, doing this thing like our life depends on it. So it's probably not so surprising, actually. Right, next question is from orin.fitness. How do you manage going away on holiday or taking time off with coaching? Do you just not check in with clients whilst away and not charge?
So sorry,
I guess it's more towards me than it is towards you, right? Because you haven't.
But I mean, I guess it's kind of similar because
good to get both perspectives.
Yeah, I think with How do I manage going away on holiday? So it's very much taking on board the same principles that you've mentioned in your post before, where I'll always tend to take just a bag of protein powder with me, maybe some
Mike,
sorry,
I don't think you're answering the question.
from a work perspective.
Yeah.
How do I manage going away on a holiday or taking time off with coaching? So essentially, it's quite easy from a physio clinic perspective because I can just ask, right, I'm thinking of taking such and such days off, block out my diary, sorted. And then from a coaching perspective, it's just a case of again, similar thing, giving the clients a head up that we that from this date to this date probably won't be available for coaching, but we'll set them up for that week. Neither of us have ever taken more than a week off coaching. And so, in and around that, we might we'll make sure that they've got a plan for whilst we're not checking in. But then outside of that, we'll either kind of, might exchange emails or do things slightly differently. But that's essentially what it is, really. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was like, you're not answering the question he's asking. So
No, I'm glad you kind of put me back on the straight and narrow because I was going off on a tangent.
and it's interesting you talk through that because also just how clear cut it was. When I'm off the clinic, I'm off the clinic. It's like simples. Whereas when you're doing your kind of self-employed work, it's not quite as like hard lined, but I think it probably should be. And I'm not great at this, but so people know when they sign up for coaching with us, we have a contract which just says, hey, we have the standard days of holiday. I think it's like, I don't know how many days it is. Whatever your physio, actually, no, physio stuff is, you don't have holiday, right? Yours is you're self-employed, so you don't have days of holiday.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different. But anyway, for your standard job in the UK, you have a number of days of holiday. Off the top of my head, I don't know it because it's not something I really think about because I know I don't get anywhere near to those days of holiday off because there's bank holidays and things like this. In the contract, it says we have bank holidays off, but I don't by default take those off. I lean towards over providing versus under providing at all times. But so we have a number of days of holiday. So clients on signing up know that's expected. And to be honest, if anyone listening to this is a coach, well, no, is a client of a coach, I think you are more than happy, unless your coach abuses this, but actually I can say it to you, Mike, because I'm your coach, right? If I go on holiday, you're like, Steve, totally cool. You're kind of like happy for me to go on holiday and like take some time off. Like you never miss a check-in type of thing. And that's what I get from my clients too, is like, they're like, yeah, totally fine. Like take that off. So I always just try and give as much notice as possible for holidays. And it's just as you said. So first of all, it's in the contracts. They have that expectation up front that it's going to happen, that there will be weeks of which they're not expecting to check in. I give them as much notice ahead of time as possible. And it's just as you said, Mike, we set them up for that week. So the check-in before the week we're away, we set up the next 2 weeks, whether that's like just what we're trying to achieve and the nutritional adjustments we expect. If they're a competitor, then it might be a little bit different where I will check in with them depending on where they are within their contest prep. So if they're weeks out from a show and I'm on holiday, I'm still checking in with them. But it might just be it's a WhatsApp voice note versus like a typical full-on Revive Stronger video check-in, right? So there'd be a way of making sure to navigate those times. And when you're coaching them throughout, we educate our clients. So they can easily go for a week on their own. They don't necessarily want to, and they look forward to their check-ins, but if they need to, they definitely can. So we do it that way. And as you said, taking more than 1 week off is something I personally struggle with. And I would like to at times, because going to, I don't know, Japan, for example, I'd love to have 2 weeks out there, and having 2 weeks off check-ins is something that I have a hard time swallowing that pill. I have thought about potentially refunding half the month for the client, just to be like, hey, I don't think I have to do that. I don't think my clients would expect that, but that makes me then feel comfortable about that because they're not getting 2 weeks worth of check-ins. And then sometimes, rather than take holiday, I will quite often do easier forms of check-ins, if that makes sense, where I'll get a client to email check-in and I might do a voice note reply. There has been moments where I've use that approach. So, for example, when I went to get my tattoo, I could have taken that as holiday, and I have the contract right to be able to take it as holiday. But I was like, I still want to check in with my guys. I just can't do it the way I normally do. So I just said, hey, you check in as normal or check in via email or voice note, and I'll get back to you, but it'll be a voice note. I won't be able to do my whole setup as usual. And they're all completely chill with that. I think the great thing with being self-employed with those sort of situations is you can really build a rapport with your clients, especially if you don't have a stupid number of clients. So you're on a level where they understand it and they get it. So hopefully I did a good job of explaining how that looks for us. But I think it's really important that as a coach, you have holiday, because we all need that. We all need to take breaks. Coaching we love, but even the things you love, you have to take a step back from it now and then to stay in love. And so long as you set that up from the get-go within your kind of contract or your kind of client coach expectations at the front, there's no qualms. It's part of the process. And yeah, you set them up for that period of time anyway and make it as comfortable and easy as possible. The only issue is navigating more than 1 week, if that ever happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I have anything else.
No, I think that was so comprehensive for sure. And I totally agree with you. I think just I feel that the processes that we have, and with having more video diary check-ins, you really do build up a trust, and like they know you're not taking the piss. It's like, oh, Steve's, off again. It's like, no, like you said, we want you to take holiday. We want you to have fun. We don't want you to burn out. A burnt out coach can't help anyone, because just like training, we get stale, and having that period of time off, coming back refreshed, being in a good mental well state, it flows to everything else that we do. So, and I think, people understand that. So yeah, I think that's really cool.
One great point, and one final note is it also teaches, it's a good opportunity for the client because you're not going to coach them forever. So if they can't handle not having a check-in for a week, that's a problem. So it's a good coaching opportunity actually. So I have actually even had it at times where a client has reached out to me whilst I've told them I'm on holiday, and like I'm not getting back to emails and stuff. And I was so close to getting back to their email. And I was telling Charlotte, and she was like, hey, you're meant to be on holiday. Why would you be getting back to emails? Why are you even reading them? I was like, damn it, like I shouldn't be doing this. And then I thought, actually, that what he's asking here is nothing he needs my help for. I think it'll actually be better if I don't come back to this email and he just rides this discomfort without me having this immediate response. I even think it sometimes, Mike, I'm very quick responding to emails normally, or like WhatsApp messages. And sometimes I'm like, maybe it's better for them to sit with that discomfort for a bit more time. Like, I know it's a bit of a weird way to think about it, but sometimes when you are just like, again, we don't want to be those hand-holding coaches that just have the answer all the time. We want our clients to become self-sufficient. So they eventually, if they left coaching, they know exactly how to manage the process and they could confidently. Yeah.
Yeah, spot on.
Next question.
Are you?
Oh, sorry, it's you.
You okay for time?
Yes, let's see if we can get through a few more because I feel bad.
Okay. Dr. Jared Rice, our man, says, specialization phase. Number 1, how many muscle groups can be prioritized, maximum? And then number 2, what is the minimum maximum duration? I know it depends.
So all of that depends. So in terms of like specialization phase, there's no number of muscles that have to be, or there's no limitation on the number of muscles that can be prioritized. Like if anyone says, oh, you can only prioritize 1 or 2 muscles, like who, what context, why? If you're fairly new into the gym, why can't you specialize everything? If you're even fairly advanced in the gym, but the gym is your life, you put everything towards it, why can't you specialize on everything? You could. So I have a really hard time saying there has to be like a hard rule of you can only specialize on this many muscle groups. And to be honest, I think that's part of the reason I don't often run specialization phases for people, because I'm just like, unless they really have to, like life limitations typically is the reason to specialize. Like, hey, you're an advanced natural bodybuilder, but you can only train 3 days a week. Well, suddenly full body everything, you're just probably not going to grow very much at all. So better to pick a few things to specialize on. But it's not often you run into that limitation. So I have a hard time saying that there's a maximum number of muscles that can be prioritized and maximized growth-wise. If I had to be pushed, I would say probably I wouldn't really be thinking about more than about 2 in the upper body, big like chest and back, and then deprioritizing everything else. And then if you're prioritizing legs, probably everything else wants to be mostly deprioritized. If you are doing more like, I don't know, you're specializing on calves, abs, delts, you can probably do 4 smaller muscle groups. So upper body, like big muscle groups, up to 2, lower body, pick 1. If it's isolation, like fringe muscles, up to probably 3 or 4, to be honest. That's where my head goes, at least. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, Mike.
No, I was very much on a similar line of thought with that. I think, and what was your thought to the last bit of minimum and
Duration.
maximum duration?
And he rightly said, I know it depends. And exactly, it does.
Yeah.
There's no minimum or maximum time for anything in regards to like phases of training or diet. There are points of which, for example, some people will say, I don't know, you shouldn't diet longer than 3 months, or you should only diet once you've lost 10% of your body weight, that's where you should call it. And they might have some evidence to back that up, and that 10% one does. It has some evidence to suggest once you've lost about that amount of weight, you start seeing stronger diet fatigue, essentially, is a way to term it. But it doesn't mean that that is the case for everyone. And it depends on like how over fat that person was, maybe, and also variety of factors. So it's more so, okay, have they got high diet fatigue, and maybe they experienced that at 5% body weight loss, and you needed to take a break then. It's kind of tricky to kind of give minimum and maximum duration, apart from, I guess, a minimum duration. Man, if someone can't do 4 weeks, like what are they even bothering doing? But I guess for a specialization, a minimum time to specialize, I'd probably say I'd like to see someone do 6 months personally. If they're already needing specialization phases to see any significant growth, they're probably going to want to at least invest for 6 months. Outside of that, I mean, I'm just forever specializing on quads. So like side delts, there's no limits there. Like you talk to any advanced natural bodybuilder and that you ask them about their weak point, they'll be like, yeah, I've been specializing on that muscle my entire life. I don't know if you have thoughts on it.
Not really. I think it's just because I can definitely see why some, like you said about quads and specializing there, like when you talk about it in that way, oh yeah, you have been specializing all that time, but you might also rephrase it as you've been prioritizing or biasing your training more towards that. And I guess it's just a similar thing, but saying it in a different way. And I've maybe not always had a very clear example of my head of someone who needs to specialize in a body part so much where, you know, they need to kind of take away from other things. I think the only example I can think of is more in like the Mr. Olympia territory, where people like Branch Warren, they literally don't need to train their quads at all because they respond that well. And so all they need to do is just train their upper body, maybe. You know, that's the only example where I think, oh, you know, that makes sense.
I guess female categories often specialize just by default, and maybe men's physique, you could argue. A lot of men's physique guys train their legs like nobody's business anyway. But especially if you're doing, I don't know, wellness, then you are just focused on thighs, glutes, like that. You are by default specializing. But if you're just a general bodybuilder, it's just like you said, you're more so focused on areas. I find specialization to be, and like you said, there was different terminology. So you're right. I haven't been specializing on quads, but I have been focused on, if I'm going to prioritize anything earlier within sessions, if I'm going to add volume anywhere, if I'm thinking about it, I put it there. But I think some people think literally I have 100 sets that I can put towards my body. And so I want to specialize and put, I don't know, 40 towards my quads. And then I've got 60 sets to spread between the rest of my body. It doesn't work perfect math like that. I had it with a client recently, actually. He might listen to this, where his back volume was reasonably high. And he was like, back to strength, couldn't I bring that down and put it towards my chest? I was like, in theory, or like, when you think about it as simple set volume for the week, yes, but you might find that you reduce your back volume and your chest is already at its limit. It isn't getting way more recovery suddenly because you're doing a bit less back, and we're just holding your back now. So I'm like, we could just push both. So I think the only time, I mean, I've never tried this, but I can imagine if you put your leg training way on the back burner, because they're such a big muscle and they fatigue you so much, maybe that opens the door for a bit more upper body training. But I can't see it like having a significant impact, because every muscle's its own kind of muscle in that sense, and like has its own recovery demands. So it's not like you
Yeah.
can get it from elsewhere. It's not like you have $100 and you can spend it how you like, sort of thing, if that makes sense.
Totally. It just the thing that just sprung to mind is that it's just so contextual. It's so contextual. It's like it's not a textbook. It's not black and white simple. It's like, well, you've got to ask yourself a few questions first, before you make a decision. Like you
Yeah.
said, it's not just a case of taking from back, putting to chest. It's like, hang on, how is your chest recovering? Is it at its maximum, capacity? It's so many individual questions that you've just got to ask yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and we're only talking about sets, right? I mean, you could even specialize via like pick exercise selection. You could quite easily make lower body training just like some easier lifts, for example,
Yeah.
less systemically fatiguing, maybe a bit more less stimulus. Or you could leave more reps in reserve on some lifts and push others harder. Like, it's not only set volume that you could do it. So it's like you said, that there's so many ways towards stimulus is really the goal. But then there's only a certain amount of stimulus a muscle can deal with before it's like, hey, I can't deal with more than this, because you start seeing joint and connective tissue get beat up or whatever that's specific to that muscle. So
Mm.
yes. Let's do another one,
Uh,
because I quite
All
like,
right.
depending on how long these questions are, I'd just like to see if we can get through these, all of them.
All right. Well, hopefully this is a quick one. So Mandy Lee Beauty asks top three things that changed you or your client's back growth or progress.
Oh, I was meant to ask you this one.
Oh, sorry, I totally cheated there. Well, I can start a little bit.
Cool, go for it.
I think one thing is just maybe biasing at some lengthened partials for some exercises, particularly for things like lats. I think that helped with a few things. Um, and I guess for me, it seems such an obvious and simple thing, but kind of almost just thinking of a simple thing such as, right, mid back, you kind of want your elbows out at 30 degrees, whereas lats, it's kind of more elbow down towards your iliac crest type thing. And I think something just simple as that, sometimes it can, for me, it kind of just, it clicked a little bit and it helped me kind of differentiating between mid back and lats. And the third thing I think would be um, just maybe again playing around with different angles. I think because again the back is multiple muscle groups, um, big area, and just hitting it from a few different angles I think is really useful. So I think those would be my top three.
Cool. I'm going to try and not repeat any of yours, because that wouldn't be useful. So my first one does relate a little bit to length and partials, but being more aggressive with back training, and don't being not initially it was not being scared to use momentum. That's changed to help, because a lot of back movements are hardest where we are weakest, and so we fail in the short position when we still have more to give in the lengthened position. And so length and partials make more sense as a more refined version of using momentum to help drive the movement short. So, but in the past I would try and justify using momentum to get it short because of that poor resistance to strength profile mismatch. And that allowed people and me to train my back closer to failure. But being a little less pristine and like a form Nazi, to use that terminology, I think has helped. Being a bit more aggressive with back training has been really good. Then you mentioned ones I would mention, so I'll try and do a different one. Not letting other things be the limiting factor. So making sure to use some sort of Versa grips or straps within back training is just, if you've never done it, it's an absolute game changer. You can just think about hand as hook, driving through your elbow, and that makes a big, big difference for people. And what could be a third one that isn't talking about a variety of different things like you mentioned? Understanding, I think, that the back is, like you said, a big muscle. And so you have so much there. You have your erectors, you have your lats, you have your teres, major, minor, like rhomboids, traps. Like there's so much going on there. Rear delts, like So don't expect the volume tolerance of it to be similar to your chest, for example. And a lot of people talked about doing like a 2-to-1 ratio of back to chest work, which I think was for wrong reasons of, I don't know why their reasons were, but it was like a reason for posture and things like this. But it makes sense to have a higher amount of work towards your back, probably just because there's so much more musculature going on there. So you might find that, hey, you can't think of a horizontal pull with elbows flared, like you said, and pronated, and it's more so hitting your upper back. You can't count that towards your lats really very well. So don't think that that's doing something. Listen to your body and be like, oh no, now like my vertical pulls where I'm, like you said, pulling the elbow down to my hip, that's now hitting my lats better, and separating them that way was helpful. I think I probably copied one of your answers there by saying that, but I tried to word it
still
differently.
Useful. It's just repackaged slightly differently. It's great. We've got 4 more questions. Matt, Anna, you asked this one.
Yeah, I'm going to ask this one, although it's actually to me. So I'll ask it to me. So _Manji Machine said, just caught you on Jonathan Warren's podcast. So the listeners might know Jonathan Warren. He's building a decent following on YouTube in particular. And he got brought up on the podcast with Coach Kasim. I think I spoke to you a little bit about some of his philosophies surrounding ribcage positioning and the compression expansion model, which I don't personally understand a whole lot because I haven't dug into it much. I've only heard his podcast and him talking about it. But regardless, Manji asked, just caught you on Jonathan Warren's podcast. What are your thoughts on rib stacking for back work? So I don't really think about it as rib stacking for back work, but I do think if you're moving your spinal position will influence how you train your back. And as I've got more advanced, as we were just talking about there, I've liked to differentiate movements to hit specific areas of my back. And the reason for that is because I want to really make sure that area of my back is getting taken close to failure, because we see how important it is for growth to take a muscle close to failure. Similar to a deadlift, it can be a great just overall back, like a bodybuilding movement, but it takes multiple muscle groups close to failure, but nothing specifically to it. And so if you really want to be specific, you need to isolate a bit better. If you're moving your torso and your kind of, I guess, rib cage or your back, which influences everything a lot during your back training, you could start hitting, for example, you could be doing like a neutral grip row for the lats, but then you arc backwards with it, which I used to do, and now you're introducing a bunch of erectors. It's like, well, now what's the limiting factor on this movement? Is it your erectors or is it your lats? And if your erectors are miles from failure, then is it even worth giving them the fatigue? Could we just keep your spine flat and we just drive with the lats? So that's where I'm coming in. I'm like, oh, that makes sense to me, that especially for someone more advanced who wants to be more specific about their movements and really needs to take muscles close to failure, let's not move the kind of rib cage too much. And yeah, we can pull around it, which is great for the lats. But apart from that, I try and keep my rib cage, I guess, stacked, and so my back neutral with most of my training, so that, for example, if I like lean back, I know if I get into that stretch position, now it's all like my upper back is being stretched. If I lean forward, now the thing being stretched is more so my lats, because they're the most stretched. So it's just little things like that versus moving forward and back, and it's like you're just like distributing the tension to loads of different muscles. So that's kind of where my head goes with it. And you weren't on the podcast, so this was, I can ask the next question to you, Mike.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had anything to add to that, though.
No.
Cool. So B. Imi asks, thoughts on GLP-1 agonists' use in natural bodybuilding?
Oh, juicy. I think not outside of I think it's difficult. I won't get too much into, WADA, etc., because I think WADA and, whether it should be banned or not, I think they've also got to take into consideration other sports related to the Olympics, which isn't in the same kind of, I guess, they don't have the same context as natural bodybuilding. I would say that for me personally, I'm not sure if GLP-1 agonists should be used in natural bodybuilding. I do think it is a bit of a shortcut. I think it's a little bit against the ethos of the sport to a certain degree. So I think from that perspective, I don't think they should be used. I don't know how you feel, Steve.
So my very just rational brain goes, they're not banned, so have at it.
Mm.
But that's not my opinion, really. So I don't like the thought of their use, and I think, like you said, it goes a little bit against the ethos of things, of the sport in general, because like one of the hardest challenges of prep is the hunger that you deal with towards the end. However, what the GPL-1 agonists won't do is they won't give you energy that you would have. You still have to be in that calorie deficit. You'll still struggle with low libido, low mood. You'll still get all the other symptoms of like red S, the relative energy deficit, which we've spoken about many times. So it really only just removes hunger as a barrier. So I'm not sure how much of a competitive advantage it would really be when it comes down to it. I don't know because I haven't been on it. But yeah, it's very interesting. There's also the main use, obviously, is for that hunger management to remove like food noise and like food focus and hunger essentially. So it makes being in a calorie deficit easier. But there's other side effects that come with it, some positive, some negative. So I also wonder, because it removes the hunger element, does it remove a useful tool to have? Because maybe having a bit of hunger is not a bad thing, where it drives you to eating the right foods. So like, yeah, you could get shredded eating Pop-Tarts and whey protein, but you might not be in good shape because your hunger's not a problem, but that could impact other things. So I don't even know how much of a competitive advantage it would be. But yeah, I think your points in terms of, obviously it's, at least with the WNBF, we have WADA as our like governing body there, and they don't just look at natural bodybuilding, where this is clearly something that would be of like a performance enhancer in some way. Other sports not so much, maybe. It could even be looked as, I don't know, a healthy aid in some sports. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, I just don't think I'm not sure if GLP-1 agonists apply a lot to a lot of other sports in the same way. But I think the biggest thing for me is that you don't want there you just want there to be a level playing field. You want everyone to be kind of having that level playing field. And I think the only thing where I would feel against GLP-1 agonists would be if they did create that. However, I'm very open, and if it came up that, as you said, because I think you raised some really good points there, that in reality GLP-1 agonists didn't provide much of a competitive advantage, then I'd be like, oh, okay, fair enough. But again, I also think, there could be actually advantages to hunger. It's an uncomfortable feeling, but actually, maybe there's an evolutionary aspect to that provides benefits. So, yeah, it's an interesting debate. And I think if all of us can just try not to be too dogmatic and try not to be closed off in our views and have some really good debates, I think there could be some really interesting discussions around this.
Coaches are going to use it with their clients, no doubt about it, especially because there's a number of enhanced coaches that coach naturals. And so they're going to have probably easier access to such drugs. Because like you said, you want a level playing field. And I mean, it's level if it's not banned, you can all use it, right? But how do you get access to it? I don't know. I don't know how easy it is to get access to, but certainly enhanced coaches have those networks probably available to them. And it is being used on the enhanced side of the sport. We've seen some people use it of note, like Dr. Mike, for example, used it in his latest contest prep. And I imagine he's using it because it's helping. So I don't know. It's definitely an interesting... Well, I think we're going to see people using it. I wouldn't be surprised if some people have used it this year. They might not speak about it openly. And certainly next year, someone of profile is probably going to speak about the fact they're using it. And then we'll find out how useful or not it was. But next question, Mike.
Yeah, let's go.
I'm going to ask you because
Yeah.
I can. Tony Isaacs _Isaacs asked, last time either of you got trapped under the bar benching?
Oh, I genuinely can't remember.
What about Smith machine?
Ooh. No, I haven't been trapped by a Smith machine.
What about failing in a Smith machine? Not trapped, but like you've gone up and then been like, shit. I can say it probably happened to me this year, I think.
Oh, really? It hasn't happened to me this year, because normally I can just I'll fail, but for what my body proportions, like the hook is like there, so I can normally just pop it and rack it and then wheel myself under. So it might have happened recently. Yeah.
I definitely have had it a
So,
number of times this year when I was doing like I can vividly remember doing barbell, not barbell, Smith machine incline press and doing like partials and then being like, no, and then like, it's just I have to squeeze under here and this is awkward. But on a barbell, yeah, I can't remember the last time I was trapped underneath a barbell. Uh, it's probably been a bit close a while ago, but not actually failing because it's a bit risky to do that.
I think it happened to me at university once. And I did the old classic, like tip the weight off, tip the other weight off, and then like do that.
Oh yeah.
But I don't, not since then.
Last question. I'll let you
Yeah.
ask me, although you'll probably be the one to answer this.
Aura.Matterson asks, why does mobility work make my pain worse?
Huh. I mean, this is a complex question, probably, isn't it, Mike? Because
It is
what's
a very
pain?
complex question. Yeah.
My brain immediately goes to like practical side of things of like maybe you need to scale back the mobility work or find some other mobility work that's helpful, or do you even need to do the mobility work? But
There
I'll
you
let
go.
you dive into anything that comes to mind to you because I think you're way more qualified to answer this question.
No, not so much. But I think the main thought that comes to my mind here is, you've got to know what the problem is that you're dealing with, because some problems don't respond well to static stretching or whatever mobility work that you might be doing. Um, what a good example is, tendons. Sometimes tendons don't always like to be stretched. So actually, if you were to if you had a tendon related problem and you just hung out in a deep static stretch for a long period of time, you might just piss it off. So that's kind of one example. So I think the first thing that I would just say to Aurora here is like, do you know what you're dealing with? Have you spoken to someone about it? And then what I would do there is I would just feed that back to them, feedback that, despite either their advice or what you're trying to do, like it's making the pain worse, and then see what they have to say. And again, for some problems and for some things, the problem responds better to more strength, force output type work as opposed to pure mobility. So, but yeah, those would be my main thoughts.
Cool. That's a wrap, guys. Thank you very much, Mike.
Woo!
Thank you guys for your questions. We're now fully up to date, so I can drop in a question box next week to get all your amazing questions. As a reminder, it's the Hypertrophic Time Chamber over in my broadcast group on Instagram. It's always linked in the description, so you can join there and ask questions. Or you can DM me or Mike separately to ask questions, or comment on YouTube because we should be able to see those, and we'll keep those noted down. And as a reminder, if we didn't make it obvious during this chat, we are coaches. We offer online coaching. If you are wanting to take the bodybuilding stage, do a photo shoot, just get fatter, get fatter,
Hopefully not.
fitter, slimmer, stronger, more muscular. You want to work on your relationship with food. You want to get better in the gym and strength training. We're here to be able to help you. And I mean, we might get you fatter, but mostly more muscular.
Exactly.
And we'll trim the fat later. Yeah, we have online, comprehensive, very personalized coaching. So yeah, you can always check that out via the link in the description to check out the online coaching and book a consultation call with myself, Mike, or Ryan. Otherwise, anything else to mention, Mike?
Nothing else to add, Your Honor. Thank you very much for listening, guys.
Final thing, happy birthday, Mike. Put it in the comments. We want to see it flooded. Thank you, guys.
Oh,
Catch you next time.
thanks, guys. Bye.